Alex here with a video, legal nuts and bolts video on non-disclosure agreements. I initially saw some news. There's actually two big things going on. One of them was the Donald Trump non-disclosure agreements, which I wouldn't want to touch. It's a hot potato. But then there was the other one with the Elizabeth Holmes. I think she was the CEO of that company, Theranos, and her non-disclosure agreements. There's more interesting stuff in that documentary with how they are used to totally terrify people. And so I thought that I think with these two topics, or these two current events, we have a good time to cover this video. I actually thought of doing the non disclosure agreement video a long time ago when I had done the non compete agreement video, which is a must watch. You guys should watch that video, especially if you've been forced to sign a non compete at work, which are becoming even more common nowadays. I've signed quite a few of them. In any event, this has to do with getting out of contracts, which I think would be better understood if you hit the pause button and watched three other videos before going on. The first video is procedural unconscionability, the second video is substantive unconscionability, and the third video is adhesion contracts, and all three of those videos are in the legal nuts and bolts category. The idea that you can get out of a contract is both bizarre and sometimes it comes off as immoral to non-attorney people, which is most of the population. And those three videos will help you understand why the government and the courts have allowed for there to be doctrines created that help you get out of those kinds of contracts. In a nutshell, the unfairness of the agreement itself is even more unfair of this idea that you can sign something and then get out of it. The things that the courts have seen people coerced into signing just get worse and worse every day. And it's not necessarily always worse in the sense that it's just egregious. There's also worse in the sense that the legal tool that's being used is just becoming more and more ubiquitous. It's almost just like routinely these companies are having people sign these non-compete agreements and these non-disclosure agreements, and it's alarming. So this video, by the way, guys, I really don't care that much about the particular popular person slash politician slash celebrity with regards to Elizabeth Holmes and Donald Trump. I'm taking advantage of the fact that these events are current because I didn't do this video in the past thinking nobody would care and probably that nobody would understand. But now a lot of people are talking about it, especially people who watched the documentary on the Theranos situation, specifically the portions that have to do with how they, in my opinion, literally terrified their employees into staying quiet. And they actually did go after, I believe, two of them. I know that they mentioned one of them had paid $300,000 in attorney fees to defend himself. And it took I guess his parents had to sell a house or something to protect their son. Um, and that's just so insane to me that they would actually go to that length to keep people quiet when it's just to me, I guess I'm just naive or something, but I feel like if you don't want your employees to tattle on you, you probably shouldn't be doing illegal, immoral things. Where did this idea go? It's like they've shifted from doing the right thing to just making people sign pieces of paper that keep them quiet. And it was the same thing when it came to the non-compete agreements. It's like, what happened to the idea of paying your employees really well, giving them good benefits, and treating them right? I guess you don't have to do that anymore. I guess now all you have to do is get them to sign a piece of paper that says they can't work anywhere else. And I don't know if I talked about this yet, but people will sign things if they have to sign them to keep their job or to keep it's not just employers that have this kind of power. Landlords can have this kind of power. If you don't sign it, you're evicted. Or they just won't renew your lease, which some people find really uncomfortable. So they'll sign stuff to just stay where they are. I mentioned employers. If you don't sign it, you're fired. They don't even have to tell you that. People just assume I have to sign this thing that they just gave me. Most people don't read this stuff. And that's another thing that I hear complaints about. Oh, you should have read what you signed. I think people don't read stuff because they know if they don't sign it, they're not going to get what they want. They're not going to get to keep their job. They're not going to get to stay in their apartment. They're not going to get the cell phone they're buying, which I think to some people is frivolous, but that's what adhesion contracts goes into. Adhesion contracts goes into these contracts that are just mass produced and given to everyone on take it or leave it basis. You have to sign it to get your cable or your Wi-Fi, or like I mentioned, your cell phone. And people just are used to getting the product. They want the product, so they don't read it, because it doesn't matter what it says. If you don't sign it, you don't get the item, and you want the item. Whether or not this is right or wrong has been discussed by the courts. In those 3 videos, I discuss the doctrines that have come from these debates of agreements being discarded because of some element of wrongfulness or unfairness or lack of equal bargaining power, stuff like that. And so the non-disclosure agreement situation just goes to the problem of now people are not talking about crimes that are occurring in the workplace, like whether it's sexual harassment, rape, or some other sort of scam. Now people aren't talking about situations of inequity at work. Maybe there's known racial or gender sexist reasons as to why people aren't being paid the same, stuff like that. People can't talk about it because they signed their non-disclosure agreement. Now, from what I looked at with those 2 particular situations that I mentioned, apparently the agreements were either too vague or they were just blanket agreements that the company said you just can't talk about anything ever at any time. And so those got thrown out. Apparently there are some situations where non-disclosure agreements are actually valid, I guess, when it comes to like trade secrets and stuff like that. But the government and the judiciary is certainly not happy about employees being told that they can't disclose things that are crimes or things that maybe are harmful to the public, that the public needs to be aware of so that they can deal with it, whether it's a First Amendment issue and a politician that needs to be exposed, or whether it's maybe, I don't know, some kind of a chemical treatment issue, something like that. I know that we have something local in Nevada that's there's this giant lawsuit going on about this bottled water company that's toxic. I'm not sure if non-disclosure agreements came up in that situation, but I imagine they probably did. In any event, I didn't get too technical in this video. I'd usually get a lot more technical, guys, and the reason I didn't is because those 3 other videos that I mentioned really get into all the technicalities. If you have any questions, please watch those other videos first, and then go ahead and mention them down in the comments below, because I feel like those 3 videos will explain most of the technical details as to how contracts are dealt with by the courts that are unenforceable. And you know what? I'll give you one example. In my life, I worked with an employer, and they had me sign a piece of paper that said that I was waiving my right to unemployment. And I went ahead and signed it knowing that that was unenforceable. There's actually a statute that says any agreement waiving an employee's right to unemployment is void as contrary to public policy. So that's really powerful statute. I signed it knowing that it was unenforceable. Eventually, they went bankrupt and closed, and I went and I got my unemployment. And I remember it coming up with either the telephone referee or the hearing appeals officer. I think it was just the telephone referee, about this piece of paper that they submitted that, they were like, hey, he can't get unemployment. He agreed. And I was like, yeah, that thing's unenforceable pursuant to the statute. And they already knew that, but they were kind of shocked that I knew that. And I didn't feel bad about signing it knowing that it was unenforceable, because if you don't sign it, you don't get the job. And I was unemployed. I know that it bugs people. It's probably going to bug some people to hear that, but I stand by what I said earlier in the video, which is if there is any sense of wrongfulness to signing something that you're going to get out of later, then I would concede that whatever wrongfulness there is to that is outweighed by the even more wrongfulness of forcing people to give up rights that they're entitled to, forcing people to keep secrets that are criminal, forcing people to stay at a job they don't like because they're not allowed to work for a competitor. Those things, in my opinion, are much more immoral and much more wrong. And I really wish that this issue of unenforceable agreements would get talked about more, because so many people just don't have a clue that that's even possible. And so what happens is, I feel like a lot of these companies know that these things are unenforceable or difficult to enforce, but they use them anyway, just because it has a psychological factor that most of the people who sign them aren't attorneys. They're not able to afford attorneys. And so even though they're unenforceable, most of the people assume they are enforceable. And so just by psyching people out, it makes it worth it to actually go ahead and continue to do that stuff. I hope this video is useful to you guys. Let me know down in the comments below if you got something out of this video, or if you have any questions, and I will see you guys next time.